Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Elliot, and this is This and That Reviews, where I take movies and I compare them to other movies. And so theoretically, if you like those movies, you'll like this movie, or maybe if you dislike this movie, you probably might like that movie, and that's the entire purpose of my channel. This is, as my clickbait title would suggest, is the Rogue One of revenge movies. This is Femme, and I trust that you've never heard of this movie. I've never heard of this movie. I don't even think it was in theaters, and it's currently on Disney Plus Hulu. And so if you have Disney Plus Hulu, you can watch this, and I would encourage it. I find that the more that I like a movie, the less that I really want to talk about it, because I just want you to watch the movie. I knew the basic plot line, like the opening part of this movie, without knowing where this was going. I never saw a trailer. I just heard one of my reviewers talk about what this movie was going to be, and then I was like, I'm going to watch it. And it took me a little while, and as soon as I pressed play, unlike most movies, or unlike a lot of, let me preface this. Unlike a lot of movies that I just randomly decide to watch on a streaming service, like I'm about to, like right after I do this video, I'm about to watch Killer of Killers, and I also want to watch Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. One, because I heard Killer of Killers is really good. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is just such a funny concept. But unlike a lot of movies that I watch on streaming services, specifically, I suffer from like the TikTok, Instagram reel age of like, it needs to really capture my attention, or else I'm just looking at something more interesting on my phone. And with Femme, I was like glued. I was locked in, as the cool kids say these days, to this story, and because I needed to know where's this going? Like what even is this movie? Like, what is this movie trying to be? Now, if you've never heard of it, I will give you the blurb that I got, and if that even kind of sounds interesting, go watch it, and just don't watch the rest of this review. If that sounds interesting, I would encourage you, go watch it, because that's all I got. I watched it, and I'm here to tell you that it's great. The blurb that I got is that a drag queen leaves like their performance, or they use him in it, like he's a guy. He leaves his performance, and he's still dressed like a girl in drag, and he goes to a convenience store, and where he meets hooligans. Let's say he meets some hooligans, and they beat him up, and then it cuts to 3 months later, and he sees that guy that beat him up again. And then the movie happens. And now, to either say that this movie is a revenge movie would be disingenuous to the movie, but also saying that this is a unconventional love story movie would also be disingenuous to say, because it's kind of both. And it's kind of neither, but it's kind of both. And I'm being purposely ambiguous because that's how I watched the rest of the movie, not knowing where this was going. I love unconventional love stories. I loved The Lake House with Keanu Reeves, where it's a magical, box, right? A magical mailbox. I love The Adjustment Bureau is one of my favorite movies, where it's the idea of fate and how that plays a part into who we love, and if you can beat fate, right? I love unconventional love stories. I would consider like 500 Days of Summer a unconventional love story type movie. It's not a Hallmark, rom-com, it's a realistic look, even though it's unconventional in that it's realistic. But I also love like science fiction element, love stories. Edge of Tomorrow, I would consider a unconventional love story between Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, in the way that it happens in this wacky, world. Superhero movies are unconventional love stories, right? I would say that this is an unconventional love story, but it's also a revenge story, and it's both, and it's neither. And the thing about this movie is that it is the rogue. Now I'm gonna go into like not spoilers, because I'm not gonna spoil the ending per se, but if that already sounds interesting to you, go watch the movie. And everything that I'm going to talk about now, I'm going to consider like spoilers, right? Because I think that this movie ends in the same way that Rogue One ends. In that it's not that it doesn't end, it's not a movie without an ending. But if you watched Rogue One, Star Wars, right? Star Wars, we're on the same page. Rogue One. If you saw Rogue One and didn't realize A New Hope and the rest of that side of the saga happened, or if you never saw Andor and didn't know that that side of the story happens as well, and that this is a middle chapter, if you just saw Rogue One as a movie by itself, that is this movie. It's a movie that does technically have a beginning, middle, and an end, right? At the end of the movie in Rogue One, they give the Death Star plans to the rebellion. And that's the end of the movie. And all the characters are dead. That's the movie. But at the end of the movie, if that was all you got, and you didn't get A New Hope, and you didn't get like, oh, well then after they give the Death Star plans, like Princess Leia gives it to Luke, or gives it to R2-D2, who then gives it to Luke, who then, is able to then destroy the Death Star, and, the Empire, but the Empire is still out there, and they're still building, and then you get another movie, and it continues, right? It's episodic, right? But if you just took Rogue One by itself, devoid of, a future and devoid of a past, and you just took that movie, you kind of leave the theater wondering, well, what happens? Especially if they left the Darth Vader stinger in. Like, who's that guy? But like the Empire isn't destroyed. Like, what was even the point of that, right? The point of it isn't the ending. It does technically have an ending, because the purpose of the plot of the movie was, we have Death Star plans. We need to get the Death Star plans. We need to give it to the good guys so that they can defeat the bad guys. That is our mission, right? And they complete the mission. The movie has an ending. It technically has an ending, right? But if your thought process is, yeah, but it doesn't have an ending because the Empire is still out there, and what are they going to do with the Death Star plans? Are they going to destroy the Death Star? What are they going to do? Like, what happens after this, right? But the actual purpose of Rogue One is not the ending of the movie. The purpose of Rogue One is to showcase the idea that a rebellion is started from people. It starts with people wanting to make change. And the idea of it is to spark conversation. It's to spark the idea of rebellion and about doing something that you think is right. Even if you die, even if you need to sacrifice yourself, for rebellion, for change to happen. I would argue that is what Rogue One really is trying to be. It was the inception of, it was the start of what the Andor series became. It's the idea that as a regular person with no superpowers, Chirrut Imwe notwithstanding, regular people, like regular human beings with zero force abilities, right? That they can come together for a common cause and do what needs to be done in order to spark change, in order to spark a rebellion, in order to spark hope. And that is the idea of why the movie was made. That's how I feel about this movie. This movie technically has an ending. It does technically end. But at the same time, I feel like you're going to leave the movie being like, yeah, but like, what else? Like, what happens after this? Yeah, but this thing and this thing, right? You know, like, you'd have the same, like, Rogue One questions if Rogue One just ended there and there was no before and there was no after. You'd have the same questions. But I don't think that's the point of the movie. I think the point of the movie is to spark conversation. It's to spark the idea of what the movie is. And I'm not going to explain what the movie is. You have to watch it. And I feel like it's good. I feel like it's interesting enough that you should watch it. But I feel like that is where this movie truly differentiates itself from just being a I Spit on Your Grave. Or an I Spit on Your Grave 2. Or an I Spit on Your Grave 3 Electric Boogaloo. You know, like, there's an infinite sum of like revenge, you know, horror movies, right? There's an infinite sum of, you know, rom-coms, right? This isn't a rom-com, but it's like, you know, like I said, it's both. It's both a unconventional love story where all I could say the whole movie was, what the fuck is your plan? What the fuck are you doing? Why are you agreeing to this? Why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself in this situation? What do you think is gonna happen? Like, what do you hope to get out of this? Like, you have no plan. What are you doing? What are you doing, man? That's all I could say this whole movie. It's an unconventional love story, but it's also a revenge story. And I feel like it's not a movie that is trying to... it's not a story. It is an idea. And I think that is why I will remember this movie for a while. I'm not saying that it's going into my... I must find this on Blu-ray and buy this movie. But I will say that it will stay with me much longer than I Spit on Your Grave, or I Spit on Your Grave 2, or I Spit on Your Grave 3, Electric Boogaloo. You know, like, it'll stay much more in my mind than a story. Because what is better than a definitive end? A question.